What's going on here? The reaction to the One Piece live action versus the reaction to the Avatar live action is a perfect example of what happens when something is made in love and reverence for the source, and when something is made to elevate it to a superior art form. Elevate it to a superior art form. So I don't necessarily agree with what this guy is saying. There have been different reactions to One Piece and to the Avatar live action. To be fair, Netflix doesn't have the best of track records with live action adaptations. They have one good live action adaptation, and that's One Piece. Nobody liked the Cowboy Bebop. Nobody liked the Death Note. People, I think, are kind of mixed about the Avatar, but they don't have the best track record. That's like what? That's 1 out of 4. We can say 2 out of 4 if we want to be generous, that I just named off the top of my head. So it's kind of just one of those things where you're like, well, what is it about One Piece that people like so much? Well, I do think it was true to its source material to a certain extent. They did change things and took liberties for themselves, and so did the Avatar. I think a lot of people reacted to like Aang flying without his glider, and I'm gonna say something you guys don't want to hear, but I saw Aang just kind of jumping. Yes, he was floating. He was defying the laws of gravity, which sounds exactly like flying, so I know what some of you are gonna say. But in reality, the way I see it is that he's kind of just. They did a real bad job of showing him jumping, because I think like a lot of times in the anime, he jumps and it's like this explosive shaking camera, like he goes flying, he goes away really fast, and they make it look really solid and heavy, whereas in the live action they made him look really floaty, like he's already flying and doing things that he shouldn't be able to do. I think he's just falling with style, falling really slowly, mind you, but still falling. If they had made him move faster through that scene, I think people would have been okay with it, but they made it slower so that I guess you could take your time with it and you could see everything. It's really weird. And yeah, I think the execution wasn't the best thing, but there's another thing about I'm already doing this is my first impressions of Avatar. I'll put out a full review once I've watched the whole thing. But another thing I think is just the storytelling. I think people got a bad rep from like them saying that they weren't going to make Sokka sexist anymore, and then I think there was one other thing that people were upset about. It probably was just the flying that people were upset about. But what I got from watching the show is that it does stay honest and true to the source material, as the best that it can. I think like the way that it does storytelling is not the way that I prefer to have story being told to me, but for a general audience, or for people who want to relive the Avatar experience, what it does is it tries to do a lot of exposition to put you in the shoes of those characters and for you to have the feelings that they're feeling at the moment. The only issue with it is because and they're spending so much time marinating the interpersonal connection between each characters, we don't really get to see the individual growth of the characters. And because we don't get to see the individual perspective of a character whenever they are going through conflicting times, it ends up coming off as like we don't care or kind of pale in comparison. So we don't have that kind of like inner monologue to help us with their inner personal conflict. I think the connection between one another is fine. And yeah, they did change things to better fit the story and the time, because there's only 8 episodes and they're an hour long each. And I think it's fine if you want to trim off some of the fat. But that's my first impressions. That's why I see why people might be struggling with it as of right now. But I'll give out a full review later for that.